Hello and welcome back to another review of the Flash Contest entries on New Element. This is episode number 3 and hopefully the final episode. We've got 8 more parks to look at. These parks are all from New Element's Flash Contest, which is a quick build, no custom scenery, and no hacking contest that the website hosted. They got a number of great entries. We've already looked at about 2/3 of them, so now we're going to jump into the last few, of which are some pretty impressive parks, including this one, which is the winner of the whole contest. So this is New Element Kingdom by Pacificoaster, and it's basically if Magic Kingdom at Disney was themed to New Element. So let's dive right on in and take a look at this number 1 placed park. So we start off heading underneath the monorail instead of a railroad. Nice looking arched entryways coming into the main street here. So we've got the forums and a number of other areas here. So here's the Accolade Emporium, and on this side we've got G's Pizza, of course, for Gee Whiz, and the NE Hall of Fame, and vintage NE banners. Always some good history in here. Plus Six's Playhouse. And on this side, the Archive of Fiestas. Coming out following the red path, we have the New Element logo here in the middle with statues to Iris and Adix. Which is always a nice little touch there. And then here's our main castle, the Parkmaker's Castle, as you can walk through. I really like this detail of the drawbridge coming into the castle here. So let's jump in by heading across to the first area here on this side. So this is Loopy Landscapes. So this is our RCT1 inspired area. So this is Landscape Falls, LL in parentheses there. Sort of the Splash Mountain variety here. I like this little touch noting that this is the show building in the back here, so you can see the roof even though it's kind of naturally themed on the outside. And some of the various waterfall elements. Nice little layout here, pretty short, so it's kind of got this S-bend that wraps up to here, up the lift, big drop, and then finishes with some various weaving back and forth here inside the mountain / show building. Very traditional LL type scenery here, with using the roof, the land tiles for roof or for buildings, and then the track architecture and the pathways and everything like that. All right, we'll move across here to the NCSO Cemetery. So here is the Coaster Resurrection, which is set in a very nice Disneyland Haunted Mansion looking building. One of the better pieces of architecture in this whole contest, in my opinion. It's a little bit big, but I think it needs to be to get all that detail in. Also some custom supports on the coaster here using the observation tower track. And lots of little details here, queue line through the graveyard, a couple of these buildings on either side, so the various mausoleums and things like that. So here we've got a nice layout. Over the top hat, twisted airtime hill, a couple of weaving back and forth over another airtime hill in the middle, and then what I assume to be inclined brakes right here. Definitely an intimate, inspired layout. So here we have building 1, and then all the toilets here are nice, famous NCSO builders. Famous in quotes, perhaps. But a great area as a whole, and the best architecture, in my opinion, in the whole area. Continuing along, we have the pretty hilarious drop towers to the various accolade awards. So we have bronze, silver, 75 no, which is pretty funny, and spotlight here. Nice detailing on the top here, and this nice sign that the people sitting on this side get obliterated on as they launch up. So nice little clever detail there. And I love the various names of the stalls here, such as Thirsty for Spotlights. On the back side here is the second monorail station and a very impressive castle. I like this use of the supports holding up the awning in the front, as well as the towers throughout. It kind of makes it feel a little less blocky. So here's the Spotlights Hall of Fame and how to build a spotlight. That is the name of the motion simulator that's inside. So how to build a spotlight in action. Here's some track texture at its finest, as it is, doing some archways here. And then our carousel here in the middle, called the Carousel of Admins, which for a little while it was like that. Design Hall of Fame on this side, nice counter to the spotlights, and definitely that Disney World Fantasyland look. And this side, here's how to build a design, and all nice HVAC usage up top, and the cool detailing you'd expect. Good use of the gears here in a sort of realistic-ish type setting. And then on the back side here, we've got the Design of the Year, which is, good little kids coaster. Heading throughout here, we've got a queue line that goes nowhere, but I see this is kind of meant to be a food stall, which I like. I think that's a neat touch. And then just the way that the castle here looks like it's sunk into the water, just to make a little bit of elevation adjustments throughout. And then, so anyway, a nice little drop there, and helix around through the building, which is cool, wrapping into the station. Jump across to this side, and this is the realism realm, where we've got a clone, because of course you have to have a clone. And right here you've got the realism point of view, always from 10,000 feet up. The essential backstage worker here, and other little details throughout. So another food stall here, using Texas Giant sign to advantage, and the blue roofs, because you've got to have blue roofs now, because that is the in vogue option at the time. And continuing along, we've got some awnings here, of course they are, and another drop tower here. So this is the fantasy point of view, a little more daring and exciting perhaps than the realism one. And the monorail snaking through here is a pretty nice touch. And then here we have Soarin', Fantastic Flight. So another show building created here, sunk into the side of the main street. Flying coaster with actually a pretty nice realistic layout in the middle of the Fantasy Springs area. So a little bit of fun there. But anyway, great turning drop here underneath the lift hill, up and into the pretzel loop. Pretzel loop up and around, over the plaza, into the tunnel, back out of the tunnel, across that nice waterfall, through the inline twist, down and around the drop tower, back up through, and then diving down, under, and up into the brakes. Super smooth layout, really great flow to everything there, and nice work for all of that. Really liking these waterfalls here and the way that this pathway kind of ducks in underneath of them. And then the show building itself here, as you can kind of queue around and then go into that building. There's also a cut-through path here on the side. But just so much detail in this one. I like that all the track architecture had names, so you at least were clued into what you were looking at in some of the instances, and it helped fill in some of the gaps, and kind of covering all the bases, playing just some inside jokes, which I think always does pretty well in these kind of contests. So good usage there, I think. But looking great, definitely a clear choice for the winner, I think. This was one of my picks for the best of the contest. So definitely a good winner here, and definitely congratulations to Pacificoaster for it. Alrighty, well, let's move along, and we're going to jump to Nile River Delta by Who's Leon. This is a great park, too. This is one of the better ones in the contest, in my opinion. Starting over here, so we're going to jump into this sort of bizarre-esque marketplace with a lot of the sandy wood-type texture buildings throughout, and some pretty incredible architecture here. This castle structure here is just super impressive with the various colors, the white and the gold, the blue accents, the arches in here, and just the usage of the various pieces, including like the chess pieces and then some of these space age pieces there. Super well done to give you domes and some of these spires there. Like that impresses me more than most of the architecture in the contest. First coaster here right off the bat, we have a Vekoma Junior Boomerang coaster, which is kind of a nice change of pace from a lot of the coasters we usually see. So this one is going to back out of the station here. And once it gets to the top, we will drop it down and through the station. around the corner, over the outward banked hill, up through the stall point, and then scroll back in. It's not a huge coaster, and it doesn't do a whole heck of a lot, but it's accurate to what those coasters do, and I think it is a good choice for right here. The blue looks nice too against the more muted colors here, and then these blue flowers really set off all of that. So let's continue up the hill a little bit here. On the back side, we've got this great coaster here, this inverted coaster, and then really liking this observatory 3D cinema here that's pretty impressive with the telescope. But let's jump back to the coaster. It's got a pretty long queue line here, and quite a lot of guests in the park. So here we're going to dive off the first drop and into a loop. Wrap up and around through the inline twist rather than a 0G roll. Around and through the Cobra roll. Through some more of the buildings. Up and through corkscrew, final helix, and into the brakes. I like this layout a lot. It's a pretty realistic layout. I'm not a huge fan of just the straight inline twist, but it works, and I think you get extra points for going through the loop and still making it look smooth, since that's usually something that looks way more forced than that. 9 cars per train is technically too many for this size. Alpengeist is the only one that's got that. So I'd knock it down to 8, but otherwise that's nitpicks at best. What I like here is this queue line set in the open space, because this whole park is pretty crowded throughout, and there's a lot going on here. But something like this, where it's just a little bit open space, has the fencing and the landscaping and everything. Open space is hard to make look good in the game, especially when you're as compact as this is, and I think it's done a great job right there. Here's a wooden walkway below, nice little detail there. I almost expected this to be a coaster or some kind of a dark ride that would pop out and back, but nice look there. And then a bit of a cutaway here. We can see the treasure chests inside and some of the other ruined pieces. Good use, again, of these Egyptian monuments stacked up to make a larger building. Same with the Hangman Noose throughout. I feel like that's one of those pieces that's kind of hard to make look like something else, but it's done pretty well here. Again, used to full advantage to make a pretty substantially sized boat here. Then let's take a look at some of this other stuff. So here's Nile River Tours. I like the name for that. So this is our tour boat here, and then I like the drawbridges here, which would let this boat in and out coming around, I suppose. Here's another one of those boats. Using the signage here on the side with the zeros is kind of neat. Looks like mooring points for the boat. And then up underneath we have some more detailing here. Factory pipes, factory bridge. This guy is called Usi, the Ferris wheel here, but loving this factory. Again, using the mints as a smoke coming up off of the chimneys there, and just the various layering is done nicely here, because you've got all the pipes underneath and then the pathway hanging above over top of all those various parts and pieces. Let's cross this little bridge and we'll come over to these little stands in the middle. I like that they actually have names, which is nice. Cute little island here in the middle with some good architecture. Out here in the middle of the ocean, or river, or lake, I guess, we've got the drop tower that's themed to a lighthouse. Actually, a really nice attempt at a lighthouse theme. I love the coloring here and then the kind of netting around on top. That was done very well. More boats over here. Kind of the same design for a lot of them, but I think there's only kind of so much you can do on this without hacking together trackitecture and various other bits and pieces. But we land on the other side of the island here, or the strait, I suppose, and have a scrambler. Some more architecture with a number of different colors here. The blue is nicely done. Putting the playing cards behind the glass gives that that good colored look. So you have the brown glass here, so it kind of gives a textured wall look and sort of pulls away from the playing card look of everything, which I like. I think that was done well. All these buoys down here with the gravestones in the middle and then the pipe on the outside, I think is a very nice touch. So here we have Gahiji, I guess, or G. I'm darn sure I'm pronouncing it wrong, but we're going to take a look at it. It's a Morgan, probably, hypercoaster of sorts that winds around and does a really nice job using the space here and sort of some of the terrain as well. So we got this nice curved drop through the middle of this island, up and over, and then we're going to tower over top of the plaza here, cross through the castle, skirts that very nicely, and then loops around the factory, and then back towards home, over one airtime hill, over a second airtime hill, with some cool supports throughout, and the red and white I'm really a big fan of, around the final curve and into the brakes. This layout is great. It just flows super well. I love the orange, yellow, and purple combo. I think it stands out super well against all of the other coloration, especially where it's going over some of this marketplace area. It just looks good. It was done very well, and the fact that it can kind of cross through this castle without taking away from it is nicely done. Some more areas here, just architectural nice details with the docks using the miniature golf. All the flowers hanging out into the river, giving that more of an overgrown kind of feel to it. And this sort of woodsy type architecture is quite nice also. So that is it for this park, but really great park. 3 strong coaster layouts, in my opinion. This might be the strongest selection of coaster layouts in the whole contest, and some really nice architecture and detailing. This looks great from a macro perspective. Once you pull out a little bit, you can see the mint smoke coming up out of the chimneys. I think that was very, very well done. So good job on this one, and we shall move along to Payload by Nin. This was runner-up, I believe, to the #1 spot, or at least in my voting it was. This was definitely one of my favorites as well. Sort of a minimalistic approach compared to a lot of other ones. You can see, at least at this point, that it's way less crowded than a number of the other parks, but what it does do is convey that very well architecture-wise. So we're going to launch up this hill, sort of a Hulk-esque start. Around the corner, no barrel roll up there, which I kind of like. It's a little bit of a point of difference. Straight into a Cobra roll around some pretty impressive theming, which we'll come back to. Big loop. Just a bit of hang time in there. Wrap up into a diagonal brake run, or at least that's the assumption. Corkscrew over the plaza. Back around the back of the station here, and another hill down into a vertical loop. Some good interaction with the monorail there. Wrap around to an overbanked or an outward banked corner, and then up here into the brake run. So really, really well done overall with the space theme here. Let's take a look at the big building here, where we use the net pieces and just make this massive looking center window that is super cool, great texture. I love the overhangs of the building that cover the queue here. It's sort of a very modernist approach on architecture, along with the curved go-kart roof on the backside here, and then some of these various like pipes and pieces coming throughout. So all of those bits, but it's a massive building, and it doesn't have a whole lot of detailing on there, but the way that the textures kind of break up the overall size of the building really helps keep that scaled down and keep it from being too massive compared to the rest. So here we have a great tower that you're going to loop through. Matches a similar look of this tower here on the front that has this rocket, which using the little birdie from the sports set, and the 2 rocket fuel boosters here with the gumdrops and everything. Just such a clever use of the customs or no custom scenery. The gravestones here as markings on either side for the kind of blast area coming off of the thing, and just such a nice detail there. Same with the support work out here on the side. It actually looks, about as good as the stock scenery here that you figure would have to make an appearance in here somewhere. So next building here, so this is To the Stars, the Apollo story. Definitely getting some Kennedy Space Center vibes, as you should, I think, especially with the little rocket garden over here, where it's got some pretty good variety to everything. But I like the use of the 3D cinema here. That was hidden pretty well with all the other detailing around the side. It kind of makes it look like it's part of that building, part of the architecture. Again, using pretty good detailing with textures to break down this building into something a little bit smaller. You got the Hubble sign on this side and the waterfall behind the mesh there, which I appreciate. I like this snack stand, the Satovites. That's clever. Very good there. But nice plaza throughout. Got a lot of the yellow flowers here helping that pop, since this is such a muted palette. So all your colors stand out that much more when you're using white, gray, and black for the most part. And then your rockets here in orange and the towers in red and everything really help that all stand out from what could otherwise become kind of a washed out approach. Out here we have the centrifuge simulator, again using similar architectural details with the overhangs. Really like the trusses, feels sort of 90s, 80s, 90s architecture, especially space age type architecture. And then this cool little ride here, the lunar exploration. Really like how this is all wound in here. A lot of height elevation too, and using those little logs to advantage to bounce it up and around. And then you have your huge satellite piece here, the lunar lander here in the middle. But a great little ride. You didn't see too many themed car rides in the contest, but that one certainly takes the cake as my favorite, I think. And then engine cooldown zone, naming some of the little food stalls, always a nice touch. Help give you context as well. And so really just a great job all around. I think the hidden launch here, the vertical integration, and some of these other more hidden details work really well. Landscaping is just done very nicely. It's very clean. It's minimalistic. Like, there's not any plants over here, but it still feels okay with the grass and the dirt and the rock texture all sort of mixed together here, and then also raised differently from each other. So you're not just transitioning from texture. You have an elevation change as well, which helps smooth that texture along and really makes it look natural and appropriate. So such a clean entry. I think that's what I like most about it, is that it's a very minimalistic approach, but it still manages to pack in the detail very, very well. So great work on that, and one of my favorites in the contest for sure. All right, now we'll move along. So this is Pineapple Road by Dr. Dirt. Another park split down the middle by a river, like most of the parks I feel like coming through here. So let's jump into the entrance here and take a look at this fun park. Sort of some food theme going on throughout, which I appreciate. We have fried plantains and orange fries here, just right off the bat. Very nature-focused, textural approach to everything here. So here's Kiwi's Boats and Company, the docking platform. Cute little architecture here, using the restrooms as a little bit of the architectural element there, the wood restrooms. So you've got your paddle boats on this side, and then the pedal boats on this side. So Loveland's Love Ride. Continuing down the river, you have this pretty neat docking or gates for the canal, which I think is a neat little touch. So this is Wayward Sailor here, a little entertainer, using the hangman's noose again as a little bit of a boat detail, all the way up here to some more of these docked areas up here. But really like this. This is a cool detail on the water side. But let's come up here and take a look at the main attraction, which is Mango Express. So here we have a coaster dropping out of the station. This appears to be a GCI wooden coaster of sorts, using the terrain pretty darn well. This interaction is super cool, with the big curve over top and then the diagonal drop right through the canyon right underneath of this piece of track. That's framed super, super well. Pause here for a moment, let this guy clear the block brakes, which he's about to do. While we're sitting, we can mention the red rock used well here. It's sort of a rare usage in the natural focus park, but I think it looks quite nice. All right, dive down that drop and up into an inclined helix with that steep turn, diagonal airtime hill over top of the water. Underneath the return run here, as we do this figure 8 turnaround, outward banked corner, over the airtime hill again across the river, crossing the track again. I really like this section where it's going up underneath the lift and then back over top of it, and then down underneath the queue line. Curve over top of the station, another airtime hill, up and around into the brake run. What I like about this is that it keeps the pacing really well throughout a pretty long layout, and again the interaction between everything. Like this bit, I think, is one of the better pieces where you're going underneath through landscape and underneath the lift hill, then back over top, then back underneath, then back over top again. It's a really great up down sort of approach, and it adds a lot of interest to the overall design. I like the flowers throughout here, all the pink flowers. Has that little pop of color. Again, sort of like Nin's entry previously, the colors are all pretty much browns and greens, so all those colors in here are going to really help pop that. So the red of this red rock and the pink of the flowers really help make that all stand out. Great details here. You've got the Pineapple Farm Pissers, the bathroom here, and then just some of the other little farm details where you have the little farmland with the flowers here. Here's some fruit trees up on this side, and lots of just little natural type details. Not a whole lot in the way of rides as far as this one goes, but I think that was, of course, sort of the intention here is the more open space you can get, the better. So here's their pineapple harvester right in the middle. Well, let's turn around and we'll cross the locks here and go over to the other side where there's not too much else. We've got a carousel here, so this is the Granger's Traveling Horses. Again, a nice, pretty minimalistic look overall, looking the colored awnings here. So here's Granger's Ice Cold Lemonade and the fries. And then on this side we have the Harvester's uniforms and the Harvester's refreshments. And then up top here is the Banana Railroad, which just jumps between the station that's over here and hidden up underneath, and then our main station here that uses the land blocks for some of the architecture. So pretty simple overall approach, I think, but the way that the landscape is integrated into the pathways, so like all these different winding pathways through the open fields, really makes this feel sort of warm and a little bit homey, I think, of like this farmland type experience, very picturesque, bucolic setting throughout, and then set against this wooden coaster that fits really well into the landscape. It just looks great. It would have been nice to see maybe another coaster, like a smaller something, or perhaps something in the corner, but can't complain too hard. I think this is a pretty good entry with a lot of nice look. All right, continuing down, I'm going to accidentally open this park again, and now we'll do it. So this is Rainbow Valley by Alex. And once again, another one of the great parks. This could have been a contender for the win as well, and I believe it was. So let's jump in. First thing you see off the bat is this great rainbow flower bed with the rainbow tramway that wraps around it. Again, a variation on a theme you'll see here throughout the rainbows through the entire thing. Another river through the center, but pretty steep drop off on here down into this river basin, which has a bit of a canyon approach to it. So I like the elevation change here straight off the bat. The way that this tram goes across the river on this tall trestle, to have the overhead wiring as well, I think is a pretty cool design. On this side, you can come up the staircase here with the flowers that change from blue or purple all the way up to red on the upper side, and then climb the structure up here to the rainbow flag at the top. There's a couple of different sky ride here. So we've got the chairlift station here and an intermediate station, which is a pretty interesting and unique approach. You usually don't see a whole lot of those, but I kind of like it. So this is Big Red's Bistro on top, and then further down here is Hot Chips. But using the terrain to advantage, you can really get a lot out of this sky ride, where you've got your upper station here, the middle station here, and then your lower station all the way down here in this valley a little bit. Because here's a nice pathway down. Actually, here you can see it best. A nice pathway down to some seating by the river. A little bit of a trellis here as you go around. So let's continue in the front plaza here, where we have the merry-go-round, and up here we have the glowworm, which is a clever little theme of color. Wacky worm design, and a nice one at that. Good look. I like the coaster cars, how they transition from the blue to the green, and that it's making multiple laps. It gets 2 circuits for the price. Up the hill here, we've got sort of a little Hobbit House-esque approach almost, with the funicular on this side, again, really using the terrain well. You can see that coming down the whole way. And then up on top here, we have the golden wheel above the Rainbow Falls. This nice little water feature here. Again, when you think of creating sight lines and vistas, Alex is one of the best at that kind of creation. So you look at this bridge looking straight up at this Ferris wheel that's perched right above this water feature. Super well done. A pretty incredible views of the whole thing, and just landscape-wise and terrain-wise, it's working very well. The white flowers, too, help to offset the color that you have elsewhere. So really, the white flowers are used pretty much everywhere that you don't want to accent the color. So you're calling even more attention to those specific areas that are so heavy on the color. As you wrap down this pathway to the water line, I guess, we've got the Cafe Rosé, I suppose. Cafe Rose, maybe. And multiple elevations here, but couple of different entrances. I like the use of this brick. I don't see this brick used very often, but I think it's a nice texture and it's a nice color as well. Jumping between the wood and the rusted roof is kind of neat, gives it a little bit of an aged look to it, without looking too messy, because the building itself is pretty clean overall, so it has that nice clean design to it. Both of these buildings are stacked really well, so you can access them from the top side or the bottom side here. A cool little seating area perched up here on the hill. Again, I said this a bunch of times already in this, but the terrain is used really well to really call out various elements in here, and to use some rides to advantage, like the funicular and the cable car on the other side. Alrighty, so let's cross the Rainbow Bridge here. I'm assuming that's the colored lights that go across. We have the water coming up underneath. So on this side, we've got Wavelength, another clever theme when your theme is color. A bobsled coaster, which I think we had said earlier in one of the previous videos. You don't see them very often, nor do you see them done very well. And I'd say this one is both. It's done very, very well. It has a pretty good layout, with a mid-course brake run right here in the middle, and then a second section that's got a lot of pretty good drops. A couple of flat sections, uses the ride type to advantage. Final helix here into the brakes and back into the station. I like the modern looking station. Kind of feels almost Frank Lloyd Wright-esque perhaps. And then the various wavelength colors here for the main sign is a neat touch. But these huge flower beds, this just huge pass of color across the entire thing, it's just a giant swath of color, but it really helps give this whole thing a theme without really having theming per se. Like, the flowers really are the theme. So done quite well. Here we have a Helter Skelter, a little slide, and a pathway here that crosses up underneath the tram, which exits down to this spot. I like this pathway crossing up underneath of the other one. I think that's neat. And this whole park feels kind of like one of the original RCT scenarios, perhaps. It seems like it could be something that you would see in that. So here's Valley Giant. This is maybe a take on Alton Tower's proposed wooden coaster at a time. And we do dive off and into the valley using terrain to advantage. So we'll dive off here into a double down. Starting now. So nice, good pop of airtime in the back seat. Across the water and up over some more airtime, a good turnaround here with the trees, keeping it a little bit lower. Another flat section, up and over another airtime hill, and then we'll take a couple of flat corners and some hills back into the final brakes. A pretty simple layout, but man, if it isn't good looking. It's just this angle, in my opinion, with the double down drop here, the size of the drop with the terrain keeping the structure looking pretty small, is just a beautiful approach and great design, and one of my favorite coasters in the contest. Using the Texas Giant sign, as any good no custom scenery builder does. Lots of other flower details here, more gradients coming across, and then some of the seating areas here. I like this open plaza with usable seating, so you can actually use some of those bits and pieces, have some ice cream there. On the other side here, we've got the prism that uses the glass objects to the theme. And then lastly, in the corner here, we've got a restaurant. This is the Meadows. I'm assuming the whole thing is. Yep, this is the Meadows. And another restroom building here. More usable seating and some covered trellis area. And then cute little bridge over here on the end. Sort of like a little suspended footbridge across the water pretty high up as well. There's just such nuanced detail to this park that I think really promotes it to be one of the best parks in the contest. It's simplistic in its overall take. It's not anything here that feels too crowded, but there's so much detail packed in and just overall pleasantness of design that it makes me want to stay and look at it and just kind of watch the rides. I think when I was doing my first view of this, I sat and watched Valley Giant just cycle over and over and over again. It's one of those parks that you can picture yourself in and just feels like effortlessly nice. So well done to Alex for another pretty incredible submission, and one of the best ones in the contest as well. All right, so now we're going to jump over to the next park here. The name, the Mars Power Reserve. This is Scoop's entry. Using the different palette of the original palettes, this has the lime green, kind of electric green color to it. So our entrance is here, framed by this huge Cobra roll and the flaming volcanoes. Zoom out, it's a little chaotic. I think that kind of defines the overall feel of this. It's chaotic, but the nice thing is that there's some pretty cool details in here. So first bit we'll just jump over and look at is our signature element here. So this is live wire. This is our Hulk-esque launch coaster. So here we go, about to take off. Diving through that, rolling into the flaming volcano, up and around to the second inversion, a dive loop, then wrapping around the lift or the climb into the dive loop, which I like. That's a great detail. Through the 0G roll and Cobra roll. Little bit, actually the pacing's pretty good through the Cobra roll. Wrapping around that exit, again, a nice use of that helix. I think those are always well done. Dive off the mid-course brake run around that element here, the power sphere, through the corkscrew, up and around through another corkscrew that crosses the track, and then over here into the brakes. Great layout. Interesting to see such a realistic layout in a fantasy setting like this, but I think it's neat, and I would like to see that too in a realistic park, like with proper supports and everything. I think it could look really, really beautiful. Great station here, some good detailing, so some station ornament using the rocket scenery here, and then another one of these power spheres which are kind of dotted around the areas. They're all this and some of the other areas are connected with this power lines thing that runs through the entire area here. In my opinion, the supports take away a little bit of that. Maybe it just feels like there's just so much going on and it doesn't have a whole lot of organization. This kind of feels like Lewis's entry in some sense, where they've done a similar thing with these greenhouses, the roofs that repeat on a couple of these spots. What I like about this is that it's not a carbon copy. They're all different sizes and shapes, but they're kind of scattered about. It doesn't seem to have a whole lot of approach as far as planning through the whole space. So like where where should all these greenhouses be? Shouldn't they be together in some kind of semblance of order, perhaps? Or like this guy who's up top here and is looking pretty rough on that side compared to the others. I don't know how you get to that one either. But let's jump around to some more architecture. So we've got this guy. So this is the aeronautical maneuvers and the monorail station here kind of together. This is the Mono Mars, which I think is a funny name. Two queue lines coming off of the pathway here. Some good architectural entry point pieces here, which I like. This is a cool usage of the signs and then the glass and the futuristic light poles. The station itself up here for the monorail is nicely done, utilizing the kind of wood look for the station elements, or sorry, not the wood look, the aged metal rocket look that we have, and then the wood here of the side friction coaster has some sort of futuristic looking details. The color there gives it a nice look to it. Coming around to this side, we've got the centrifuge track architecture. So this is our large centrifuge piece. So I guess this must be part of the main power grid of sorts. Our other coaster is found in here. So it looks like there's three, but this is centrifuge, appropriately named, I suppose. A premier, guessing, launch coaster. Whereas this one was kind of fully realistic and everything. This one's a little more fantasy based, but nothing wrong with that. So let's check this guy out once he loads in. While we're doing that, you can see that there's more of the greenhouses on this side, and then sort of a similar design to this building here using the Wild Mouse. But here we go, we've taken off and we're in through the centrifuge piece. Moving pretty fast. This is like a 70-some mile an hour coaster. A vertical climb and descent here. Now we're going to do the whole thing backwards through the zero-G roll, up and back through the centrifuge. I really like the way this looks from kind of looking across to the other side, where you can see the coaster on the inside, and you have the wall on the outside with the track texture covering it. And this like electric green color just makes everything pop that you do in that color. Because when you zoom out, that's all you see. It's black, gray, some white, maybe a little bit of red, and green. So that is used to advantage. And here is another ride called the Extra Extension Cable, which I butchered, but is actually a cool looking ride. Again, using a ride type that you don't see very often, and jumping it in and out of the scenery. You can go all the way up top here. It's a pretty long ride as it stands. A lot of it in the tunnels, which is a little bit of a shame. I always like to see more out of the tunnels than in. But a couple of different lift hills here, and I do like the way that it will pop out, swing through, and then pop back in on all these different elements here. I think on the overall, and as we take a look at this Mars rover, I think I would have liked to have seen a little bit more theming through here and some of that that detailing, but I like the look of this. I like the coaster overall. I think that was well done. That's definitely the highlight for me. And the setting is neat, and I like this palette. I think the bright green is kind of a cool color when you use it really well and make all those bright accents to everything. I just think it could have stood to have some more organization to it. I feel a little less chaotic in the middle here. It's kind of all scrambled together. I can't really tell what's going on until I get in further. Because there is some nice architecture. You look at this guy here using the glass and the green here. I think that's very neat. It would be kind of interesting to do that as almost path detailing around or roofs over pathways. Kind of feel very modern, I guess, approach to architecture. Put that above the pathways as like awnings. But good look throughout. I like the overall look. I just think it could have probably stood to have maybe a little more detail as far as organization goes. Alrighty. So the next one we're going to jump to is second to last. So this is We Overcome. This is by Kumba. In typical Kumba style, it's absolutely insane. There's so much stuff to look at, and a lot to see. Appropriate for the times, this is a overcoming virus-themed park, which is only something that Kumba would put together. Along the sides here, you have all sorts of graffiti-esque approach from a look standpoint with various viruses. So here's our favorite COVID-19. Here's Spanish flu. Here's Ebola. We'll wrap around to the other side. Here is the Black Plague, and here's cholera. So a lot going on here. A lot to unpack. Somewhat of a heavy theme for a theme park, but let's jump in because there's so many details. So we're going to call this the entrance since this is where everybody's coming in from. The first coaster we come across is this guy here. So this is Flare, a premier type launch coaster which takes off and does an inverted top hat up and over the station with a pretty huge turn and curve here. Cutback element, which looks a little awkward if I'm being honest. Curve around to the roll through the final helix and back. I actually really like this layout, probably except for the cutback element here. I think it's pretty nice looking. It wouldn't be a Kumba park without huge terrain differences and elevation. Done well here. I like using the metal fencing as some variation in the rock. It looks maybe a little bit weird, especially when we have the other rock here, but you can tell what you're going for. And as you would expect, another Kumba standard is a adventure type car ride, which has Trek for the Cure. So neat bridge here across the giant waterfall. A huge elevation change coming up top. We've got a lot of other things. So here's the Ebola gorilla for some reason, and a huge drop down here into the brakes, or back to the station, I suppose. On the other side, you've got the Marauders Miniature Golf. So this is Privateer Corner. So I'm not quite sure where the theme is there, but we have our pirate-looking theme here in our virus theme park. A lot of miniature golf holes throughout, but themed very well as you would expect from Kumba. Crossing underneath of the entrance to the space here. Really liking this this fountain. Some pretty cool detail here. So this says, "Be careful what you drink," and good little station here. A little bit of theming and using the pirate theming well. We got a pretty substantial building on the backside here. This is Captain Morgan. Since I guess if you're quarantined, you're going to be drinking a lot of that. And this houses the wooden coaster. This is Scourge. And some more different theming. Here's Privateer t-shirts. Here's Nuggets of Gold. Here's Landover Lemonade, Scallywag Soda. Clever names, Rum Fried Chicken. Definitely all the clever details that you expect from a lot of these. So here's a sign on top of the wooden coaster that says "Fire the Cannon." So let's do that and let's watch the coaster go. This is a double out and back layout. We've got our big drop here into a pretty peaked airtime hill. Another turnaround here. Another big airtime hill. Another pretty interesting shaped turnaround with that drop in the middle there. Out for the second round. Up and around the last turnaround. Here's a banked airtime hill. And then we'll wrap up with this turn that goes back out and over the queue line. That's nice framing here, how the coaster track wraps around the queue line itself, and the queue cuts into the building. I think the building is almost a little bit too big. There's a lot going on with it, but the overall looks good for the area. But it's just such a tall structure here. I mean, even compared to the center castle. Which, speaking of that center castle, let's jump in. We're going to backtrack to the front here and take a look. So this is our center piece here. So this is the Black Plague. So each one of these areas is themed to the era, I suppose, of when each of these happened. So this is the wash here. This is just a big rectangular splash boats ride, which is clever. Nice use of that. So here's Sir Hightower, always having named all the various characters and everything like that. So let's jump onto this side. This is a pretty substantial maze. Again, a Kumba staple, things you should expect. This is called When Will It End, which I think a lot of us are thinking right now. So here is the Gangnam Style elephant, because of course. And here's a breakdancing anteater. Up here is Just Binge Tiger King, which I think most of us have done also. And then looking out here, we have Fever Dream. So this is the suspended hairpin coaster, which actually is a pretty clever design. So going through all these different kind of Fever Dream-esque themed areas. I like the use of all the Alice in Wonderland type giant scenery here. Diving off into here and then into this mechanical area, turning right before the flames. Then into the card maze, go through here into this little cutaway of this butterfly garden, pop out and over top of the spider's web, and then back in. I mean, you can't miss all the pretty incredible detail and theming. There's just so much to look at. I mean, I feel like you could spend hours unpacking all of this detail. I think it's done incredibly well. But we're going to move along. This is New York City, so this is our final section. So this is, I guess, the COVID-19 section. So here's New York Strong, which is an inverted coaster, and then in the backside here we've got COVID-19 treatment and testing, which is kind of fun with little details there, and the couple of buildings on the back here. Here's a Subway, Eat Fresh, nice advertisement there for those guys, and Yankee Dogs there. So here we are dropping out and into the start of this coaster. So a pretty unique inverted coaster layout for one. We have our pre-drop off of the lift into a drop, and before we even go into an inversion, we're going to do a big turn over top into an Immelman, a loop, then up and over a dive loop, and into a mid-course break, back and around to the corkscrew, and then we're going to go up underneath the station and wrap around. I like that it's unique. Doesn't necessarily have the best flow, but it's a pretty cool take on an inverted coaster that doesn't use the typical inverted coaster trappings that I guess some others do. Again, more cool architecture here. Pretty large stuff, not necessarily as massive as some of these structures, but the amount of buildings here kind of help make that feel appropriate for the overall look. Pizza building on this side, and then just some of these other little details. So what I like about this work, among others, is just how much detail there is in here. Like, there's just so much to look at and unpack and click. All the staff members being named and all the various track architecture used and the signage used to advantage. It's just done so well. So there's just so much to see for all of these places. So granted, I didn't get into everything here, but I think it serves as a pretty good overview of just how much stuff there is to see in here. So definitely can win on view time for this kind of a park where there's just packed chock full of details. So nice work on this one. This is a great entry. And then lastly, last but not least, we have Ion Zero. This is What I Know. So we have another river through the middle park. So let's jump in. This is kind of feels like you're coming in through the backstage here, but let us take a look at the various parts and pieces here. We've got this boardwalk-esque front area. So here's a Ferris wheel. Here is the burger bar and some of the other elements. So here's lemonade, $7. So of course you're at the boardwalk because you're getting ripped off. Here's a haunted house with some nice little detailing here, like the ladder up to the roof. And these facades are all pretty great, pretty well done, put together. Down here at the beach, we have a little lifeguard stand and nice space down here. Would have been kind of neat to set some chairs on here, but I get the pristine beach look to it. On this side, we have a pretty neat attempt at a water park. This is the only attempt at a water park in this contest. Unfortunately, it can't work, which is a downside of no hacking, but it looks cool. We've got the Boomerango water slide here, and the balls used as the tubes, which is a cool touch, and then this four-person mat racer type slide with the big drop here at the end, and then this guy for the family slides on the corner. Neat look. I think the challenge is that it takes up a whole ton of space and doesn't really operate, so there's not too much to look at there, but from a detailing standpoint, I think it was done very well. Jumping over to the other side, we've got two parks here, two coasters here together. This is Neptune's Wrath and the Flyer 1. So, because we are headed out of the station for both of them, we're going to pick the wooden coaster here to start with. So this is a nice little compact approach. Kind of feels like a little GCI. I like the flags up the lift hill and the custom supports on the back side. But let's take a look. We're going to dive underneath that first hill. Little tunneled first airtime hill. Cool turnaround, dipping underneath the inverted coaster. Down and around. Wrap up and over the station and around that plaza. Cool interaction with the coaster too, with the other coaster. Back underneath the lift structure, over and around again. Slow it down a little bit, but not too bad. There was an underground dive underneath of the observation tower. This is Sky Tower, appropriately known. And then we're going to head back in here to the weird little curve brake run, but I'm guessing there's some clearance issues there that are going to prevent us from doing that straight across. And then on this side, we've got this Flyer. A little surprised we're not using the block brakes there. I think I'd rather see that than not. But this is kind of a neat layout. It feels very much like Merlin's Revenge at Dutch Wonderland or Freedom Flyer at Fun Spot. So it could be either a Vekoma or an SNS potentially. But this is a neat start here, not just because of the way that it weaves back and forth between each other, like it's doing here, but also because it uses the wooden coaster too. So there's a pretty natural interaction point there. It doesn't feel forced in any way, which I like. The inversion here is a little bit of a strange detail, especially with the family coaster nature of the thing, but not out of the question. Vekoma Juniors have in the past been offered with a corkscrew in them, so can't fault it. And I do like that interaction between Train 1 and Train 2 that you wouldn't get with block brakes in that roll and in the curve. All right, so turn around. We have our cable stayed bridge here, which I think is pretty cool. And then here is the Mad Miner, which is a drop tower that goes down underneath the ground and also has this really great theming to it. It definitely looks like a mine shaft elevator. So neat little detail there. So here is the next area. So this is Mountaineer. It has this rustic architecture, again using the mints. I would have never thought of that, and it seems like half of the contest has. So nice touch. So we'll wait for this guy to take off. While we do, just looking at more of the architecture. Good water wheel here. Great architecture overall. I think it's done really well for the various parts and pieces, like this little missing section here. So I'm guessing it's meant to be a little bit broken down, a little bit rough looking. Here's the gas station, which fits super well into this sort of textured themed area. Not quite sold on the peach and gray pirate roof, but it does blend all right. The snow roofs are kind of a bold touch here to give the little bit of a color to that area. So here we are up the lift hill. This looks like an older Arrow coaster. Passing this cool section of waterfalls that goes diagonally down. Little dip and rise back up into the first drop, sort of a Tennessee Tornado-esque start. Dive into a half-buried loop. An airtime hill, which is a bit of an ouch on those Arrow restraints. Cobra roll and the canopy over top of it, on it, which I like. Through the tunnel and into double cork. Through another tunnel and into the final helix and the brakes. Cool details like this guy here. So this is our coal mine theming as you cruise through here, and then coal veins that are buried down here. So just a cool little touch that you wouldn't see if you're not looking a little harder here. So here's a mountain biker coming over this jump, and here is Cooper's Rock Tourist walking around up top here. So presumably this is Cooper's Rock. And again, a shout out to this pretty cool waterfall down here and this bridge that goes over top of it. Nicely done throughout. Would have liked to have seen this tower potentially go all the way down, but just a little oversight there perhaps. Cross over to our final little section here. So this is Moonshiner, then there's the Carousel, and there is Monongahela. So a very Atlantic, mid-Atlantic names here. Nice rapids ride, I think. So going underneath the tunnel here, up the lift hill, and then wrapping our way down all the way through. There's a little danger sign as you dive through the mine shaft, or the mine theming, and then down this final drop and into the splashdown, like this little covered area here, and then the space for viewing of the actual drop as you wrap around and come up into the station. A lot to look at here, and actually, despite having kind of lost a lot of the map for beach and for water park, there's a lot to look at here. A lot of nice details, integrated well with the rides. All the rides have pretty good interaction either with themselves or with the path, as is this case, or with other theming, which is this case down here. So I think that's all really well done and looks great. So nice work on this one, and that is going to actually wrap up everything here. So I hope you enjoyed all 3 episodes of New Element Flash Contest entries. If you would like to see more reviews, feel free to leave a comment on the YouTube video or send me a note at Cedar Point 6 on nedesigns.com. That's New Element's website. And I will review the park of your choosing or take suggestions as well. If you would like to download any of these parks that you've looked at, there will be a link in the description on the YouTube page, and feel free to download them and check them out. Until next time, thank you very much for watching, and hope you enjoyed the reviews. Thanks very much.